You heard that as well? Did you just hear that?
I did.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, I don't think the listeners would have heard that, but the last two interviews I've done, whenever you hit record on Zoom, it says this whatever session is being recorded, and that
Yeah.
was new. I had never heard that prior to the last time, so I'm not secretly recording this. Ben, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, good to be here. Thank you.
It's. I had told Ben a minute ago, and I'll tell the listeners if I don't haven't already told you in the introduction, but this is an interview that I'm really excited for. Rollie Peterkin, who's been a guest on this podcast before recently, and I believe I'm going to publish these in sequence. But he has told me about Ben forever, and he's written about you in his book, and he, multiple times over the last couple of years have said you should have Ben on the show. And then recently did it about a week or two ago, and I thought it'd be a good time to have Ben on the show. I know what Rollie's told me, but I stopped doing my research there because I want to kind of learn on the fly. But we have a lot in common, and I'm really excited to dive into the conversation.
Me too. Yeah, yeah. Raleigh's a connector because he's definitely I've heard lots of great things about you as well, and I'm just grateful to be here with you, and thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Where are you at right now?
I'm in Philadelphia, a
Oh,
little bit
you're
outside of Philly. Yeah,
okay, Philadelphia. And where do you live full time or most full time?
that's where we live now, full time.
Okay, so you live
Yeah,
full time in Philadelphia, and we'll get
yeah.
into why I'm asking that question, why I'm curious about that question. But let's go way back because I believe you started, I would say started as a wrestler, but I'm sure you started before wrestling. But inform the listeners, your upbringing, where are you from, how you got into the sport of wrestling, what your youth was like, and eventually how that led to, you know, fighting and some of the stuff we're going to talk about.
Yeah, sounds good. So, from Long Island originally, went to Smithtown High School, and I started wrestling. Well, my dad wrestled, my older brother wrestled. Those were kind of my two heroes growing up. My dad was really passionate about the sport because that's what he was first generation college student. And that's what paved the way for him. So he really is a believer in just all those life lessons that you get from the sport and how it shaped him. And then watching my brother as a little kid on the mat, he was just he was my hero. He was just doing awesome, and he ended up wrestling in Division 1 at Bucknell University, and so I followed in their footsteps, and then my younger brothers did as well. So it was a family thing for sure, and it shaped me. It shaped me big time as a person. It's I always hear people talk about wrestling through a certain issue or wrestling through and
Yeah.
it's that mindset that you build that it prepares you to overcome all life challenges. So that was my I started around 8 years old. I was doing some wrestling camps, and then all once it started at school in seventh grade, and I was not good at all at first. I thought I would be because my dad and brother, so I thought it was just going to happen. But I was like a little meatball in seventh grade and got beat up a bunch. And I remember losing my first match and crying because I thought I was going to be good, but I stayed at it, got better, ended up wrestling college at Penn, and then going on and being a professional fighter afterwards, and being around combat sports for most of my life.
So how many kids are in your family? How many siblings do you have?
We are five, one
Five.
girl,
One
four
girl.
boys.
So four boys and one girl, and all boys
Yeah.
wrestled.
Yeah. My sister's got lots of bodyguards.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you're the second in that chain, the second oldest.
I'm the third. I'm
Oh,
the
you're the
third.
third. Okay.
My older brother and my older sister, and I'm the third.
Oh, okay. And talk about academics. Obviously, if you wrestled at Penn, and that's where you met Raleigh. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. We
Yeah.
were teammates. Yeah.
So talk about academics because I was raised. It sounds like I was raised much the same way you were. There were three boys and a girl, and we were academic and athletic, and it was just a mindset of living. And this is what you do. You do the right thing. You work hard. You get up. You try your best, etc. It was just ingrained into us. But the academic part, because obviously Penn is a it's academically a strong university. What role did academics play alongside athletics growing up? And then how did that mix in with your social life?
Yeah. Okay. Well, for me, there was a pivotal point. I was I'd say, um, I'll go into some tough life stuff. But when I was 9, I witnessed my baby brother die. He drowned. Um, and then I kind of, after that, for a little while, parents really sure, kind of getting bounced around a little bit, not really sure what's going to happen. And when I was in 11, 10, 11, I was really making some bad decisions as a little kid, like skipping out of class, smoking weed, doing dumb stuff, stealing video games at Blockbuster, all sorts of really dumb stuff. But then, the pivotal point for me was getting plugged into. It was kind of a two things that happened at the same time. Like, one, okay, getting plugged into the wrestling team in 7th grade, and then my older brother coming back from college, and we'd go to the gym every day, and he started really just building that mindset with me of just, we're gonna work hard as athletes, gonna work hard in the classroom, and good things will happen from that. And that's where, so I feel like I fell off path for a little bit, and then that moment got me back on path, and just kind of stuck with that mindset of hitting the books hard, and getting early morning workouts. And I was pushing my dad's car around the apartment complex. I'd do sprints with the 5-gallon water jugs, and like do all this stuff to try to all this do stuff to try to keep better in the sport and get stronger and all those kind of things. So yeah, I stuck with that mindset, and then and that's helped me a lot in life.
I think that what you just said there about pushing the car and the water jugs, et cetera. Rollie and I don't even know how we met for the first time, but when we did, it was like just an instant connection and friendship. And part of the reason for that is what you just said, the pushing the car and the water jugs. I'm thinking to myself, oh, you're like my best friend. You're like me. You're like the exact same stuff. So it's you're growing up in a different place with a different family, but doing the same stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. I was watching I was drinking raw eggs after watching the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I was doing all that stuff. I remember losing a match that I shouldn't have lost. And we went to, my dad put like a weighted vest on me, weights on the wrists, and had me doing sprints across in the field in the snow. It was like a foot and a half of snow or something, doing sprints like that. Yeah. And then like, okay, take me down, just like going through, just going through workouts till you puke, and doing all that stuff that it adds to the mental toughness bank for sure. Yeah. And then when you have something difficult in life, you have what it takes to get through it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, of the difficulty in life, and I didn't know about your brother, and I feel, when you said that, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, imagining that situation. And I don't want to focus on it because I don't imagine it's something fun to talk about, but I do talk a lot to kids, middle school and high school students who go through traumatic experience, whether it's loss or whether it's figuring themselves out in life and poor choices, or just various difficult abuse. What was one or two ways that helped you get through that time and turn out the way you did? Obviously, you mentioned your brother, the influence on you there, but what can you expound a little bit on that and what helped you ultimately end up on the right path? Just because I think it's important, especially for young people to hear, and or parents dealing with young people going through tough things. What were some of the ways you were able to persevere through that?
Yeah, I mean, that takes that type of, and I mean, also to the point you're making. I mean, I work with Beat the Streets, we're a youth development nonprofit. Use the sport of wrestling to positively alter life's trajectory, get kids focused on a lot of those lessons that we're talking about through the sport, and match them up with mentors, and really help them go after their goals. And I mean, there's so many people here in America and across the world that, they're just hardships are part of life. There's a lot of people going through some really tough stuff. And I think for me personally, with the loss of my brother, it took a long time. It takes years to get through that sometimes, so it takes time. And for me, it took faith too. Like you gotta look up to God for strength. So for me, that's what it took, faith and time. And then also realizing, I guess, a lesson from that, if you allow, there can be purpose to your pain, right? So there's a reason, I'm okay with opening up and talking about that now, because there's times in life where, okay, my experience then I think this is with everybody across the world, some of the things that you go through, they talking about those experiences could help someone else. So that's the concept of kind of putting purpose to your pain, and that helps people get through it too, right? Because if you're if you're able to share some of the experiences you've had and help someone else going through a tough time, well, then there's a reason that you went through some tough stuff, because you could help others with it.
Yeah. So do you know Coit Cooper? He wrestled. He's probably somewhat a little bit older than me, but he wrestled at Indiana, from Indiana. But he wrote a book, and one of the things he talks about is, what's the gift in difficult situations, in traumatic experiences, like what's the gift? What can I come out of this with? And obviously no one would ever choose that specific experience or loss or cancer or other illnesses, but there can be purpose to it. But yeah, importantly, faith and time are two huge components of it. Your career at Penn, because it's, I wrestled at Lock Haven, and academics and athletics were important to me as they were equally to you. Being at Penn, a high level wrestling program, but also high level academics. And I said wrestling first and then academics, but my guess is it's probably academics and then wrestling, especially at Penn. What was that upkeep like in terms of you're a relative young to your kid, or an old kid or a young adult? What was that lifestyle like?
That was, oh man, my experience. I mean, I made some of my just best friends. We know Rollie and just like, and some of my core group of friends, like, that we still talk to all the time. My closest friends are from that team. And so I'm just really grateful for that experience. It was hard work for sure. It was a lot, and I was working at night, paying my way through school too, and doing, I was bouncing and bartending at night, and just like, it was a little bit of, it was definitely a competitive academic environment. I'm actually back at Penn now, working on a master's in nonprofit leadership. So that's been kind of full circle. Life goes full circle sometimes, but yeah, I'd say it's just a challenge balancing everything, but good preparation for life, and yeah, demanding on all fronts for sure.
What year did you graduate?
09.
09. I was 04, so I'm a little bit older. And then so when you graduated, because I want, before getting into fighting, I want to get into professional life, or what you did post college. But when you finished your college career, how did you finish performance wise? And then did you still have a bug for a competition?
So I didn't do anything noteworthy as a college wrestler.
And did you think you were going to? Did you have plans to? Were you just doing it because you loved it? Like, did it meet your expectations, I think is what I'm getting at.
No, I think I could have done a lot better. So I think so I guess the next part of the question is yeah, I still had an itch for sure. I had an itch. I think at that time we were watching, just watching the UFC, and I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, I think I could be pretty good at this. And I remember that happening just as a wrestler, just thinking, yeah, I could do all right. And so I started training. I went to the Philadelphia Fight Factory. That's where a
Yeah.
lot of those guys came up through. Eddie Alvarez was there at the time. I was a college kid.
So
Um,
I trained. I don't know if you know this. We wouldn't have talked about, but that was the first real gym that I went to. So I'm from Hollidaysburg, which is about 3.5 hours west of Philadelphia. But Eddie did this when he was fighting for Bodog, and I'm going to say this was 05, 06. And he came to a gym near my house, and he did a clinic, and I just like stuck to him like glue and was basically hounding him. And then
yeah,
ultimately, I left my job, went to grad school at East Stroudsburg, not well, almost 2 hours from Philly, and then I would train at Fight Factory as well. And I'm guessing this was 07, 08, 09, something like that.
we
So
might have crossed paths.
that's what I'm thinking as you're talking.
We might have crossed paths. Yeah. Oh man, that'd be wild. I bet. Yeah. So that was where I was getting just the foot in the door a little bit.
And that
Um,
was
and then
after college or during college?
a little bit during college.
Okay.
Yeah. And then um, right after college, I moved to Peru. I went there and down there with Global Vision working on a social impact project. So I was just going to be there for a year. I was helping build a community center and do an educational project in Arequipa, Peru.
And can you back up a little bit and explain Global Vision? Because one of the notes, right? So I texted or I messaged Rollie last night and said, "Hey, can you give me 3 to 5 talking points, just
Yeah,
premises to talk to Ben about?" And he said that you love helping people, not just on a big global scale, but just go out of your way to help your neighbor, your friend, your whomever around you. So can you explain what Global Vision is, and then from there, maybe talk a little bit about that, your desire to help people?
sure. Yeah, 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 definitely. Um, I'm grateful for Raleigh. He's my biggest advocate. But yeah, I mean, I think it's part of our purpose on this earth, right? We got to look after each other and help each other as much as we can, and that's just part of living a purposeful life. So I would do volunteer projects in college. Went out and helped in Katrina. Went out and helped build an orphanage in Togo, Africa, when I was the summer after junior year, and then I graduated in Penn in '09. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do career wise. I was it was yeah, I was still figuring things out for sure, and then I looked at it as a good opportunity to um, go, wanted to travel, maybe actually learn Spanish because I took some classes, but was not able to speak it at all. And I wanted to do something good in the world. And so I looked at different volunteer programs, and that's where I came across Global Vision, and they were doing a project in Peru. And it was kind of a little bit random. I was kind of just like, I kind of just blindly, like, I wanted to be in a Spanish speaking country. So I was going towards South America. And I'm like, I'll just pick one. Cool. That works. And it ended up being one of those just totally transformative moments in my life, right? I met my wife there. Both my kids were born in Peru. I ended up staying there for 8 years. I ended up, Raleigh came and lived with me down there for a year. Ended up being a big part of doing lots of social impact projects there. Ended up being a part of like their MMA history for sure, and helping some of their athletes at a really pivotal time where they're getting to that next level. And so it was just packed full of experiences, really major part of my life, major chapter of my life. And that's where I was. I was in Peru all the way up until moving back to Philly in 2017, working for Beat the Streets.
So prior to hopping into your experiences in Peru, the you said that's part of our, basically our duty or responsibility as people is to help other people. It's part of what, kind of the point of being a person. One of the major points of being a person is to help and be kind to other people. Was that passed down to you? Like, did you learn that from your older siblings and your parents? Is that something you picked up in the world? Because unfortunately, not everyone thinks that. Not everyone walks with that purpose or intention. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I think yeah, I definitely had some good role models on that front as a family, and I think yeah, my parents definitely believe that, siblings, and then through with my faith too, right? Like that's what you're taught to love your neighbor, look after people. That's so all of those things, and then you just feel it as life goes on, right? You feel that when you're able to um, just add something positive to the world, you feel a sense of purpose.
yeah.
So you just kind of having those moments where you feel that internally, you realize like, okay, that's what you get that you get that moment of just like, okay, that's you're supposed to be doing things like this. Like it's
Yeah.
part of what we're built for. Otherwise, life can be really empty. So it's part of living a fulfilling life. So finding opportunities to be there for others, be there for those that are around you, is that's where life gets fulfilling. So yeah,
Have you ever read Scott Harrison's book Thirst?
I
Charity Water.
haven't. I
It's an
haven't.
awesome book. Charity
Yeah.
Water is his foundation, but it's a really good book. It's called Thirst.
Okay.
So you
Very.
graduate.
Write that down real quick.
Yeah, you graduate from Penn, and I'm linking you and Rollie together. You wrestle, you go to Penn, you both go to Peru, you both fight, you both come back. He's kind of come back. He's still traveling. He
He's
stands
all
up.
over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Raleigh's all over the world. He's been to something like, oh, like I think he's been to like almost 100 countries or something. He's
pretty
been everywhere.
intense.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, okay, so you graduate from an Ivy League school, you wrestle, you're done, and then you decide, then I'm going to go to Peru. A couple things there. When I think of people graduating from Ivy League schools, again, I'm thinking with the lens of Rollie and two other people I know who graduated from Penn and went into finance and working on Wall Street. Did anyone tell you you're crazy or like? I guess because you were moving there for to help to do good for the world, it was probably less of like, hey, I'm just going somewhere. But what were people saying or thinking about your decision to, graduate from a really strong university, go abroad with the caveat of, hey, I'm on a mission here. I'm helping people. What was the environment around you like?
Yeah. I didn't. I know if it was meant to be a year too. So I think it was. I didn't really get much pushback of just this is a crazy decision or anything like that. It was kind of um, not traditional, but also yeah, I felt supported in it as far as just but also at that time I didn't know that I was going to be there for 8 years and start a whole new life there, right? So not all the information was
Yeah.
foreseen yet. But no, at that time I felt supported with it. I think it's just right out of college. It's a good time to there's not very many moments in life where you could do something like that. And that was one of those chapters where you can before kind of before getting to your career path and life changes and all of that. So if anything, I get more of you're crazy with being an MMA fighter. Like that's I'm sure I'm sure you've gotten that a bunch of
Yeah.
times. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If anything, I usually get that reaction a little more of just like people don't put that together. They were like, okay, you seem like a nice guy. How do you do
Yeah.
that?
You're not a meathead idiot is the most
Yeah,
common like, yeah, well, yeah.
I get that reaction a lot, which is you do what, and that's um
So take me to day one, right? So you go to Peru, you don't speak Spanish. This was one of the things Riley mentioned. You go to Peru, don't speak Spanish because you're part of Global Vision. I'm assuming that you're connected to people. So it's not like you just plop down in a random small town in Peru with zero English. So my guess is there's probably some English around you within the organization. But
yeah.
take me to like day one of Peru. Like I fought in Brazil, and in the airport, it was one of the most isolated I've ever felt because there was essentially zero English. It was like the most non-English. I didn't speak Portuguese that I've ever been in. So take me to that first experience or realization to that being in Peru, not knowing Spanish, and kind of like the feeling of that the first time that it hit you?
I was excited for it because I was, mentally prepared for it. I was on the flight reviewing the most thousand most commonly used words and all that stuff. So I was doing my best to prepare for it. It takes time to learn a language. So I mean, it really takes, especially to be able to speak fluently. It's just, or just to be able to keep up with a conversation, even if it's really broken, it takes a lot of time. And but I was up for the challenge, so I was okay with that. I was, okay with. I think if you're okay with sounding stupid, that's
That's the
step
key.
number one. That's
That's the
key.
key.
Yeah, yeah. As long as you're okay with that, if you're a little bit embarrassed proof, um, that's when you can start learning. And just like anything else, right? I mean, if you're trying to, trying to perfect a skill in a sport, you got to be willing to. It's not going to look good at first, right? So it's the same kind of concept. It's just you just got to be mentally prepare yourself that it's it's all right to sound stupid for a while, and it doesn't. Don't be discouraged. Keep trying.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to
but
add to that just briefly here because you nailed it with saying it takes a long time. I've had people reach out to me saying, "Hey, I want to learn Spanish. How do I do it?" And it's I'm not saying this to like disempower anyone or discourage anyone, but unless you're going to make it a full-time job or you're going to make it a 20-year process, it's essentially impossible. Like you've because there are varying levels of, hey, I speak Spanish, right? There's varying levels of fluent. So when you hear someone say, I learned to speak Spanish in 6 weeks, it's like,
yeah, yeah,
no, you didn't.
yeah. No, that's not possible.
But
And
what?
I think immersion helps a
Yeah,
lot, though.
that's what I
Immersion
was gonna
helps a
say.
lot. Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't think you could probably. I felt like after a year that my, it was definitely I made lots of mistakes. The Spanish wasn't perfect at all, but at least there was a tipping point where it was just such a concentrated effort where I'm like, can't, had to think really hard to keep up with any conversation. I'm missing all sorts of stuff. There was a tipping point where it was okay. I can kind of learn just by speaking to people, and then it's less of a. You don't have to think as hard. You just kind of absorb new things, and as you're just making friends and talking to people. And I also had really top motivation there. I met my wife, and I needed to speak some Spanish to be able to make that happen. So that was
And
that
did
was
she speak English?
not really. No, she's. I mean, she's here now in the States learning English. But no, I mean, other than just basic stuff from from popular culture or just TV, like kind of basic stuff that. But yeah, we were speaking Spanish. So she was putting up with my really broken, like, toddler Spanish.
Yeah, speaking
Yeah.
speaking really fast to her friends while you're standing right there, so you would pick up on what she's saying.
Oh man, and then the family reunions are like yeah, probably plenty of that. Then there's um, and then when we were dating, and she might have go and see her family, and there's like maybe 30 people in the room, and everybody speaking really fast, and I'm just trying as hard as I can to keep up. I remember having just like
Sweating.
feeling so mentally exhausted after that. Like it was like you took like a, I don't know, one of those like a 5-hour exam or something. Like
Yeah.
you gotta really pay attention the whole time.
That's one of the things that I've found too, that if you haven't learned a second language, you might not even realize, but I would be physically exhausted. So not only just the mental exhaustion, but then that mental exhaustion would lead to physical exhaustion. Whereas like when I lay in bed at night and just think in English, it was like there was just a total release of just I'm only talking to myself right now, but I understand myself very clearly and very simply.
Yeah,
But it's a huge undertaking. I,
yeah,
I would
100%.
I would imagine. What are your stats? How tall are you?
6 foot.
Okay, so I would imagine I've been to Guatemala, never been to Peru, but I would imagine you stick out from the bunch in Peru.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely when I was in Arequipa, and at that time, because when we were in when I was in Arequipa in 2010, now it's much more of a modern city. But when I was there was not a single mall or really like Americanized company. Now there's a Starbucks there. There's like there's all the fast food stuff. Like that's all kind of got there now. But in 2010, none of that was there. And you go to the, you go to the local market, you get your fruit there, your all your food there. It's so it was a whole different, it's changed a lot in the past 10 years for sure. But yeah, at that time, yeah, I was like, I stuck out for sure. Yeah, stuck out. I'd say Lima, Lima's the capital. That's a 10 million person city. So that's, I don't feel like I stuck out as much in Lima, but definitely in Arequipa at first. And then when we were going work, because we were working on the outskirts of Arequipa. So those are areas called Pueblos Jóvenes, which are basically these young settlements where you have people coming from all in rural areas of the country, coming down from the mountains and trying to get close to a major city to find some work, but they're living in these settlements that have no infrastructure yet, right? So they're just kind of, and it takes a while for the government to actually set anything up there. They could go years without, like lots of years without any sort of running water set up or electricity or schools or health clinics or anything that you kind of need to be okay as a community. So you need some of that external support. But yeah, so we would work in really rural areas. So that would definitely stick out even more there.
And how much, like the impetus for that question and my thought, Trevor Noah wrote a book called Born a Crime, and he talks about, I think there's 11 official national languages in South Africa, and he talks about growing up in the country and in there being these different factions, and he says that language more so than the color of your skin, in my words now, language more so than the color of your skin can connect you to people. So he would talk about instances where, I mean, literally one time these guys were going to jump him and they were speaking a language that they didn't know he spoke, and he responded in their language, and they're like, oh, hey, buddy. Oh, it's kind of like someone talking smack on you online, and then you respond and they're like, oh, hey, buddy, how are you? But what was your experience with that, right? Being able to bridge the language gap. And I've always experienced like their appreciation of, hey, this guy is trying, and your aversion to embarrassment enables you to try harder, which then generates like this almost reciprocity of goodwill or respect or whatever. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think I always had really positive experiences with trying. I've never felt like anybody. I felt encouraged. I never really felt, made to feel like, oh, why are you even trying to speak? You sound stupid, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And also, I guess a piece of advice too with that, it's not just, you're learning. So I'm using whatever Spanish I had, and then you just put it together too with hand gestures, and smiles go a long way, and just like, just trying to connect with a positive energy goes a long way. And body language is important. All of those things are important for you don't have to have the exact right word to communicate the message you want to communicate. So you start using just being a little more creative in how you're communicating. But the so the question, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, maybe it wasn't a clear question. I was just basically what you just said there. My experiences have shown that when you try, people appreciate and respect that trying, and it's almost endearing, and it forms a bond. You labeled it as positive energy. Like that's it. It's your words, it's your face, it's your gestures, it's your like vulnerability of, hey, I'm trying.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. That just came, that word just came out. And if you're being willing to, you're willing to be vulnerable. So when you're willing to be vulnerable, you're more likely to establish trust. You're more likely to build that bond. So I think that that's I think a lesson in life too. I think that's an easy way to apply it, right? When you're trying to learn something new and you are being vulnerable by putting yourself out there before you've perfected that. But that creates bonds. It establishes trust, and it takes courage to be vulnerable. So I think those are. I think that's it. I think there's a life lesson in there for sure on vulnerability, and that's helped me build some really meaningful and impactful relationships across the world.
So let's segue into fighting. So you're there working with a charity to do goodwill, and how did fighting actually come to fruition? Like, what was the thing you saw, the gym you saw, the person you met, the whatever to get that kick started?
So before going, so I was telling you how before leaving of Peru, I was training in Philly and already kind of getting the itch and already thinking like, okay, maybe I could do something in the sport. Um, and and I already had enough kind of at least like sparred with enough pro fighters to think like, okay, I could be okay at this. Um, and then in Peru, I looked for a local gym. I found a local Muay Thai gym. I started training there and teaching there as well, like coaching some wrestling and training with there was mostly Muay Thai guys. They had some jiu-jitsu guys there too. And I was doing that for a while, and then I got plugged in with well, actually, remember Tony D'Souza?
Yeah.
Yeah, he came down and visited me a couple times there in Arequipa. He's in Cusco, so I learned a lot from him too. Anytime he come and visit, I learned a ton from him. He's like the guy's he's got some great skills. Um, and then I got connected with Ivan Iberico, who's my coach in Peru, and he is like a pioneer for MMA there. He's the guy who he went and fought a million times in Brazil, and he was the guy telling all the young fighters like, hey, you can make it to the next level, because there was nobody really expected. A lot of these younger fighters didn't really think that they'd ever be able to compete with the Brazilians next door, right? And he started just like really instilling that inner belief. So he was my coach all throughout Peru. That was Rollie's coach when he came down and visited, and he's an inspirational guy. He got a lot of people to believe in themselves, and got the his coach he coached guys that are in the UFC right now and got them to really think about that next level. So he practices luta libre. So basically just no gi. So I don't know if you're the history there with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and luta is kind of
maybe vaguely, but you can explain.
Well, at that before there was no gi jiu-jitsu, you had to have a gi to practice jiu-jitsu. So gis cost a lot of money. So luta was like, it was a little more of a, from my understanding, it was a little more of like a class rivalry too, right? Because you didn't need a gi to practice luta, but it's basically it's no gi submission grappling with a lot of focus on chokes in the front headlock position, a lot of focus on some of the it is good for wrestlers for sure. So that was my discipline in Peru, and then of course just trying to add skills, wherever we went.
Just a quick interjection here that might be interesting to listeners. So lucha libre is where I spoke Spanish and learned Spanish, is how you say wrestling. Lucha libre, which means free fighting. Luchar is like fighting, free fighting.
Luta, it's the same thing in Portuguese. Yeah.
So in Portuguese, what he's saying in Brazil is luta, Luta, and is it Livre or Lib?
Liv.
So it's the etymology of the word is similar. It means free wrestling, but it's fighting. So whenever people would say, "What do you do?" and I would say lucha libre, they would. It's like they didn't know if I was talking about wrestling or fighting.
Yeah.
So it's grappling basically, but that's
the
origination of or some word, whatever word etymology or definitions. So you got into it, started training, and then what's the fighting scene like down there? I've fought in some really interesting places, and because MMA there at that time, but maybe to a degree now, but especially at that time wasn't mainstream. What was the training environment like, and what were the fights like for you early on?
Well, I think it's kind of reflecting on it, I think it's kind of cool. It gave me an opportunity to have some of these like really old school experiences. But even though I started my first pro fight was in 2011. So if I was competing in the States at that time, the experience would have been the same. Like I have a bare knuckle fight. I've fought in like a Grand Prix, so a couple fights in a night. We would fight at this place called the Rosadal, which is like on the one night of the week there was MMA fights. Other nights of the week there was like the cockfighting. So it was,
exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about the extremes. I was like, oh yeah, but it's cockfighting. No, it actually is.
I totally have. I fought in a cockfighting pit. There was the
funny.
warm up areas. The warm up areas have like the empty cages in the back and stuff. And
Wow.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was some of my early fights were in that environment. It was cool though. There was lots of support. It's not mainstream in the sense of, I mean, really, it's in most South American countries, it's soccer is everything, and in Peru, soccer is number one for sure. But there was a lot of support for MMA. I mean, we'd get invited to a lot of their national shows, and like they do these game shows, and they want a fighter to show up and then be like the obstacle for like an American Gladiator type show type thing. I've been on those a bunch of times in Peru, things like that.
One of the notes Rollie sent me was he's kind of famous in Peru. Is that?
That's probably what he's talking about.
In reference to what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, I really feel like I got supported and embraced by the whole country as a MMA athlete, because I would do a lot of the social impact work. There's we would run campaigns and bring blankets and warm clothing up to these villages like 17,000 feet in the Andes. We would do campaigns to get all these, like a lot of the fighters, a lot of volunteers from gyms would come and donate blood platelets for kids with leukemia. So we do all these these really positive campaigns, and so I think that everyone in Peru, I've never had anyone. If I go there, whenever we go back and visit, usually have people, I feel the love for sure. Like people, stop me on the street and say like, yeah, let's get a picture, say hi, always really supportive. So yeah, I feel really grateful for that experience, really grateful to the people in Peru. Changed my life for sure. Met my wife, my kids were born there. Made all these just incredible friendships, and I've never felt anything but love from all the people there. So that's I can't take that for granted for sure.
And those early fights, I'm thinking, my early fights, having some of those experiences as well. Were there purses to all of your fights? Like, were you making money? Pro fights, were you making money from the very first fight on?
I was, but it was minimal, pretty minimal at first. Let's see here. Actually, have I had one that was like, do you only get, you're asking if you only get paid if you win?
Yeah, well, just there's a lot of guys have pro fight, like, for some of the guys I would train with early on. I mean, Philly for sure, like Steve Haig, like those guys have fights where they either like don't get paid anything, or I don't know, they never really got bartered, like getting like a thing in exchange for fighting. But it's not, people have an image of fighting, professional fighter, money, whoa, must be awesome, but it's not, right? It can be, but it's not. And that's the point that I'm getting at with your early experiences fighting down there.
Oh yeah, it definitely wasn't real money until, it was very minimal until signing with Bellator. Yeah. So yeah, it's and I'm thinking, and I got stiffed by I didn't get paid by this.
This is what Mexico. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh man, I went to fight in Mexico City, and they didn't pay anyone on the card, I don't think.
I feel like I almost fought in Mexico City. Was it part of a tournament or something? And was the money decent or no?
Yeah, it was decent money. Yeah.
I think I might have considered fighting it.
It was supposed to be decent money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh man. Yeah. I think they like just didn't pay everyone on the card, man. It was like really bad. Yeah, maybe we're thinking about.
Was it a tournament? Would it have been a tournament?
They held tournaments, so that when I thought it wasn't a tournament, but they were holding tournaments. They were trying to do something like, I think they were putting like $100,000 tournament up.
Yes, I think I might have. I want to ask my brother about this, but I really think I considered fighting there and ultimately didn't. But
I bet it's the same one, because they were getting people from major gyms in the States coming down for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Bellator there, but talk about that experience. So Bellator, if you're not an MMA fan or you are an MMA fan, obviously most people hear about the UFC. Bellator, for a long time, was the second. They're finding their own place, and it's kind of like they're the two biggest organizations in the U.S., well, in the world probably. But talk about your experience going from fighting in Peru to signing with Bellator and how that came about.
Yeah, at that point, I had a pretty decent amount of fights in Peru and Ecuador and Mexico, so definitely was ready to take it to the next level. And I was talking to the UFC, I was talking to Bellator. Ended up signing with Bellator, and it was a really awesome experience. Really great people over there. I still keep in touch with some of the people there I'd signed with. So Ian Matthews, he was recruiting me and signed me there. And I still keep in touch with him. I keep in touch with Rich Chow as well. And yeah, those guys are great, man. This is I wish I could still at some point I was like wanting to like, okay, could I still keep doing this right now? But eventually you just have I kind of came to the conclusion I wouldn't be able to train the way you need to train, and I would end up just embarrassing myself if trying to balance everything I'm trying to balance right now.
And to give listeners some insight into the world of MMA, I was talking to Bellator right before I signed with the UFC, and Rich Chow, I believe, was talking to my brother, not me, directly to me, but all these names in the stories are not too dissimilar, right? You're in Peru and you're interacting with the same people that I'm interacting with when I'm in New Jersey and Philadelphia. And since this time, you mentioned 2011 was your first fight. Is it like 14, 15, 16 that you're talking to Bellator?
Yep. Yeah, that's right. It was 14. Yeah.
And it's like, it's not nearly what it is today. And back then it's a different entity today. And it's actually really interesting to see, if we have this conversation in 5 years, where the heck these celebrity boxing fights are going to take combat sports in general, because that's like a whole new birth of something that could either like go kaput and stop, or it could turn into something that can make guys like me and you say, wait a minute.
Yeah. Where do you think it's going to go?
I feel like it's a bubble.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a bubble. I feel like this is a little bit of thought has gone into this, so maybe I'll change what I say right now, but I feel like it's a bubble. I feel like it's not a foundation. I feel like it's based on a social media culture that we live in, and I don't think that is really sustainable over the long run in general. So in reference to the fighting, I feel like there will be some big pops, and probably it won't turn into something legitimate, but can it make some people a lot of money? Absolutely, as is being evidenced.
Yeah, it's happening right now. But yeah, it's hard to see it, being sustainable for a long period of time.
But maybe someone smart, they used to have, crazy fights in Pride, like they would pair, whomever versus wrestler versus whatever. So maybe someone, I don't know, maybe someone will see this as like, hey, I could really actually people are already. So it's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
You mentioned about fighting, like thinking, could I do that? I still think that today, but then I think, man, I used to travel legitimately 5 hours to train for an hour, and I won't do it anymore. I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to do it. So it's like, yeah, probably you could, but I know for me personally, I'm just not going to put the same into it, because I have 2 kids and I have my wife and I have my business and I have other things that are important to me that didn't exist then. It was only like a single mindset. How did that realization come to you? Like, did it come gradually, or did it hit you as in, no, I'm done?
Well, I transitioned so when I was full-time competing, I would do training camps at Jackson Wing. So like 2 months before every fight, I'd be training 3 or 4 times a day, and showing up really prepared. Like that's it. That was the job. And so when my last fight with Bellator, I was kind of thinking, there's some injuries piling up. I was thinking the kind of part of also I have my daughter's 10, so I've had 2 kids for a while. My son's 5. And and I remember feeling like, okay, I want to do, it's not, this chapter isn't closed, but I do want to think about the next chapter. And because it's not gonna, it's not gonna, you can't be a pro fighter forever. And I was starting to feel like, okay, what is the best for my family, and those, that's what was going through my head. And then an opportunity came up with Beat the Streets, and that just like combined two of my biggest passions, really. It's an, an organization that uses the sport of wrestling as a vehicle to help youth that are living in some, all across urban America and living in some tough situations. So that was that felt like, it felt right. I felt like, okay, I gotta pursue this, because those were the two parallels. My whole time in Peru, I was doing social impact work, and I was competing in combat sports. So this really brought passions together. So that just, it felt like the right decision, and made that transition in 2017. And then I couldn't really think about competing at that moment because I was, getting used to, new job, new career, getting back to the States, but more so, that, but I was moving my family here from Peru, and we were going through the immigration process, and the immigration process was a nightmare. When I took the job in 2017, I thought that we thought we would just have like another 6 months to go, that we'd be apart, and then we'd be together as a family in the States. And that 6 months just got dragged out to like 2 years. And I was back and forth from Philly and Peru, and just trying to get, just trying to see my family as much as possible. So that was kind of a really, that was a tough thing to overcome for us as a family. So I wasn't really able to even think about like taking on another thing, until getting through that.
Yeah. Two things here. I have a statement and then a question. It's like when you're doing something like fighting, your pie, right? So like your mental pie is basically one thing. It's fighting. And
Mm-hmm.
then whenever there are things, life situations that divvy that up, your pie becomes divided, and then you can only focus so much mental energy, which is your life, on certain things. And the more things in that pie, the harder it becomes. John Donaher was just on Rogan's podcast, and he talks about, guys who had potential out of this world who X, Y, or Z happened, and they shifted off from it. So what Ben's talking about here is just a natural process. Like, it just, as in my life, the pie got divided and I made choices and went in different directions. And then my question is the process, the immigration process. I'm trying to visualize because I don't know, what it is or specifically what you're talking about. But is it like, so not simple, but like the idea of filling out a form, sending it somewhere, waiting, having it returned to you, doing an interview, having it something like, is it just time and stuff that had to be done?
Yeah, it is that for us anyway. It depends on the situation, but for us, it was a clear, uh, easy case to approve. I'm an American citizen. We're married. We got kids. Easy case to approve, and it is just paperwork. And paperwork's, you fill it out. You do, all the requirements are fair enough on for us at least. But the thing that my big frustration was just that it feels like you get your paperwork done and it sits in an office for like 7 months, and then it gets passed to another office and it sits there for whatever amount of time. So as you're just, your life is literally on pause. You're talking about a family divided, and I guess there's just, I'm envisioning, I don't actually, I don't know what, if I'm envisioning just like an office full of these like a million cases that they're just not getting through.
Yeah.
And you got to get in line wherever you're at in the process, and it just takes a really long time. And it takes years, which is really tough on, it's really tough to put, because in some sense you have to kind of, you're putting your life plans on hold, for that time, right? If immigration said no, well, then I would be moving back to Peru, and we would just, that would be life, right? Because I got to be there with, I got to be there with my wife and kids. So, but so it's the waiting period is tough. It's frustrating because it's hard to move on. And then a lot of times it's totally out of your control, and you're just, praying through it basically. But that was my experience with immigrations. It took a lot longer than we expected.
And you were here and your family was there?
Yeah. And the only reason we made that decision too is because we thought we were almost done. We thought we were going to do that for like 6 months, which would be, a lot more doable. But that 6 months turned into 2 years. And then, but hey, looking at the positives, that was tough, but it makes us that much more grateful to be together right now.
Yeah.
And, every day I'm just so grateful that, my wife and kids are here. We're doing life together. Everyone's healthy, happy, and our family's united, and we're all just, we're grateful for each other. But lots of tough goodbyes to get to this point.
I was going to say a resilience in your kids too, I'm sure, and it's not something you would choose, and it could have gone the other direction, if you weren't there, but it seems like it's landed in a good spot. But the resilience your kids have from being away from their dad is something they'll certainly carry with them into the future.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter adapted right away to school and life here, and she's thriving. And my son, he came at a younger age. I was more worried about my daughter because she, let's see here, we got settled in a little over 2 years ago, so she was 8, and everything was new to her, new school, new friends. But she's been thriving. She's been doing awesome. She's at like the top of her class. She's got friends. She's loving life.
Have English prior to moving here?
A bit, but I mean, she did, but just kind of like what we were talking before, it's different when you're not immersed. Yeah. So she wasn't, this is her first time being immersed. But yeah, she had a base leading up to it, but it was a steep learning curve for sure.
And how do you handle?
But she's good. They're both totally bilingual now.
I was going to say that. How do you handle it around the house? It's just like a curiosity question of someone who likes Spanish. How do you handle it around the house?
Well, they always say for your kids to be bilingual, you want to, if you have school in one language and in the home in another language. So we do try to speak mostly Spanish in the house, and I still, we speak to and my wife's definitely, way more Spanish than English right now. But my kids, we just kind of flow back and forth right now. It's like, it's pretty, sometimes we'll start a sentence in Spanish and end it in English or vice versa, or just kind of skip around. So it's now that they both just are completely fluent in both languages. So they just kind of, they can go back and forth. They could do it's funny sometimes just the way, they really combine both languages now almost, but they, they know with, depending on who they're speaking to, and they're just, it's really good for, I know I've seen studies that it's just super great for brain development, but they've had to adapt to all that.
Yeah.
And they're, they did it. They definitely did it.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
We, at the beginning, we had talked about Beat the Streets, and you mentioned it a little bit now. And I think, if kind of on the fly on the air, I don't know, decision-making or planning now, but just kind of, maybe if you give an introduction of what you do in Beat the Streets. You mentioned what it was, but for people who don't know what it is, I think you pretty thoroughly explained it, but just maybe talk a little bit about what you do with Beat the Streets. And then I'd like to invite you back on, in whatever, a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, maybe to go full in depth about Beat the Streets, period, and have the conversation be about Beat the Streets. But what is the mission of Beat the Streets, restated from what you said earlier? And then what is your day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. I think so. I mean, the mission, it's to positively alter life's trajectory through mentoring in the sport of wrestling. And what we do is, we partner with schools and community centers. We put wrestling programs there. We train up our coaches on positive youth development and really using the sport as a vehicle to teach all those life lessons that we're talking about, and empower youth to go after their own goals and grow in their personal life paths. Then we combine that with our mentoring program, where we have our mentoring center right in between Penn and Drexel University. We get volunteers from the universities all the time to help out with homework help and test prep and applying to colleges or trade schools or military or just in goal setting exercises and all these things. And we do, we're funding travel fees and all these things to go and compete across the country. So before, I specifically work for Beat the Streets Philadelphia, which is a chapter of Beat the Streets National. There's 11 chapter organizations now. The first one was founded in New York in 2005. And now collectively, we're serving over 8,400 kids across the country, and making a big difference. Making a big difference there in Philly. In Philly, a big thing that we talk about is and focus on are the graduation rates, because dropping out of high school is a really big issue in Philly. Only 68% of kids will graduate high school. For kids coming through Beat the Streets, it's 98.2% go on and graduate, and that's a really important milestone in life for success going on. And yeah, I mean, that's a bit about Beat the Streets as an organization. My role, I started as the mentoring director, so I was helping build out their mentoring program, figuring out partnerships with the universities, getting our youth plugged in, and then so that kind of program director, building out the programs. Then from there, I went to my current role, which is director of strategic partnerships. So now I'm doing a lot of work on. I work really close with our funding partners, whether major donors or foundations, and then I also work really close with our program partners, whether it's like the universities in the area or the or other youth development nonprofits, or all of the kind of, or we have a partnership with Child Care Resources and Revolution Foods, so we can provide meals to our youth and all of that. So that all of those, each one of those partnerships is a relationship, and it takes a lot of time to strengthen that, build upon that, and so we could work together to have a greater collective impact. That's kind of
awesome. It's really awesome. Two things I was thinking. One, I'm in Hershey, so I'm not far from you, so I feel like I should make a trip up this summer to at least meet and or partake in something BTS is doing.
Get you to a clinic. That'd be great.
Yeah. And then I speak a lot in schools, middle and high schools, and talk about social emotional skills, character development, using my career as a backdrop. And I created an online school called Spaniard School, and I actually worked with Beat the Streets Lancaster for 6 weeks from December to January with Spaniard School. So that's a pretty cool connection that I didn't even think of until you started talking.
That's awesome. Were you working with Ian over in Lancaster? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. But we'll talk out. We can exchange info. But I definitely would be interested in coming up and helping, because it's a very similar mission. And kind of to wrap up the conversation, the ideas of mission and purpose are strong in your story and in your life, and to a meaningful life period. So maybe, I guess I'm just stating that because as you're talking about Beat the Streets, I'm thinking that, wow, that's been a recurring theme of mission and purpose in your working, feeling the fulfillment out of helping other people, and then the intrinsic fulfillment of working hard, and then working to help other people. And it kind of connects the dots into this sense of well-being. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it, man. Rollie was right. This was awesome. And like I said, I'd like to have you back on the show, whenever, in a month, 2 months, whatever appropriate time, to dive more in depth about Beat the Streets, and specifically some of the things that you're doing and have done, and its origin and growth, et cetera. But, as you kind of wrap up, share whatever you'd like, whether it's Beat the Streets info, your info, whatever you'd like to share, please, have at it.
That's great. Well, one, just, thank you for this opportunity. It was really great to be able to have this conversation, and grateful for your offer to come and help out at Beat the Streets. So I'll definitely take you up on that. That'll be, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Pleasure, man.
And then, my info, I'm like, I'm the worst on social media. So it's not even
good for you. It's good for you to be worse at social media. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not even like, there's no point in me promoting my personal stuff because I'm never even on there, but I will take the opportunity for people to plug into Beat the Streets. Cause that's there's there's a lot of good that can be done through that. So if anybody, we're talking about Rollie, and Rollie and I launched a Beat the Streets podcast, and we interview some of our youth that have come through the program, and you get to hear from them personally. So that's Beat the Streets Philly right now. We've done that for, but we're looking to potentially do that on a national level too. But I'll do a plug in on Beat the Streets Philly, which is where I work right now. Check out their website, and social media is at BTS Philly. Website's btsphilly.org. And then also check out our national effort where you could get plugged into what's going on across the country. We're in all these different major cities, and at different levels of growth. And we want to, I believe that Beat the Streets is entering into a really big growth chapter. We're doing awesome work. I believe in our mission, and I want to see us see this program be there for youth in need across the entire country. So anybody that wants to help out or learn more, check out the national website too, which is beatthestreets.org.
Yeah, and I'll throw in a plug too, just for specifically Beat the Streets here, but wrestling in general. There's so many kids, not because of COVID, but amplified by COVID, who are feeling isolated and who are feeling disengaged and who are lacking support services, support in general, camaraderie, encouragement, experiencing wins and losses, overcoming adversity. And wrestling does that, did that for me, did that for you, does that, period. So if you're even a parent thinking, oh, I got to get my kid involved in something, even if it's not to be a state champ, national champ, die-hard, hardcore wrestler, just participating in it, being around other people helps tremendously. So, consider giving BTS a search, depending on where you're at, and or whatever wrestling club is in your area, because it helps tremendously.
Absolutely.
All right, dude. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to having you back on, Ben.
Sounds good. Thank you.